Hello and welcome back. I am back in action with another video in my Human Design and Healing video and discussion series, The Peripheral Perspective. And it's kind of funny because I have had this presentation done for a while, but there was so much going on that it was not the right time to record. And I just find it super ironic, the transit field, the sun transiting Geek 21 at the moment, which is very pertinent to this presentation today and in my own process as well. So as always, I trust in the timing of these and that whenever it comes out is going to be at exactly the right time. Thank you so much to those of you who've been checking out what I've been putting out, whether you're new to my channel or subscribed. I've been having so much fun with this, really exploring my own creativity and also exploring my capacity to explain and transmit some of the things that I have been sitting with and contemplating and learning over the past several years. As usual, something that I hope to be of practical value to you. But one of the things that's been really beautiful in my human design journey is, I guess you could say, working with the precision of language. And I don't know, maybe I'm biased. I can't really be certain about anything, of course, but there's so many things that I've had the opportunity to really reframe and to see in a different light. And a lot of the things that we see thrown around, concepts, words, and such, I've had the personal opportunity to see them in a different way. And like with everything, I always say, take what resonates, leave the rest. I am not the be all end all authority. In fact, my whole thing is really encouraging you to be your own authority, but just bringing new perspectives. And after all, this series is called The Peripheral Perspective because one of my gifts is being able to see things in a peripheral way. So without further ado, today our topic is why ego is not the enemy. And just a brief introduction before we dive into the topic today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melanie Halpert. I am a 5-1 quad right splenic projector on the left angle cross of wishes. If you are brand new to human design and have no idea what that means, that's totally okay. I guess all you need to know is that I am quite the investigative, intuitive being. And whenever I feel my foundation is solid enough and it's ready to share, then I share with those who are open to receiving my shares. And yeah, I mean, my background is really in the field of holistic health. It's been over 20 years now that I've been in this field. I've been a certified body talk practitioner since 2008, and I work with people all over the world with their healing process. And it's been really incredible to combine customized healing with my knowledge of somebody's design because it is truly, truly individuated. There is nothing about my work that will pigeonhole anybody or label anybody in a specific category. It's really about embracing you for the beautiful, unique being that you are and bringing out your gifts and really encouraging what it is that you are here to experience in this life that is for you. I am also a certified Living Your Design guide and human design analyst in training. So our topic today, ego. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we are living in such cancel culture where just the drop of a hat, somebody is offended by something and then everybody is encouraged to just cancel that thing. And although it's not new, this canceling of the ego, I find that more and more and more, whether I'm scrolling through my feed on social media or just even hearing things in conversation, it's like, oh gosh, that person is so egotistical. They're so in their ego, and just all of this very condescending talk, judgmental talk, very quick to say that somebody is in their ego or they're coming from their ego, and even encouraging people in themselves to check their ego at the door and all of that. So what I want to talk about today is basically how the socially accepted concept of ego is yet another cog in the wheel of homogenization. Because one of the big things with human design, which is the science of differentiation, is seeing how, as a species, how humanity is constantly being shoehorned into seeing things the same way, agreeing on concepts, having the same perspectives, wanting the same things, and how, in fact, we are each capable of our own unique differentiated perspective. So with ego, whether you're working from the perspective of psychology or spirituality or whatever, I hate to I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's so much homogenization when it comes to this concept of ego, and why this concept is doing more damage than good. Also, looking at this myth that the ego and the heart are diametrically opposed. So I often hear people saying that somebody is coming from ego and they should really be coming from their heart. And also why polarized thinking about the ego actually keeps you trapped. So the more that you say ego bad, how that actually is keeping you in a vicious cycle that is really not getting you anywhere. So despite what you're hearing about what you should do to transcend it or bypass it or not be in it, etc. So we're going to really be looking at this from a very, very different perspective. And you can see here at the bottom of my slide, I wrote dare to differentiate and how awareness can set you free. So where we will really begin today is by reframing this word and this concept of ego. And as a 5-1, some of you already know, I am a true heretic. 9 fifth lines in my design. I am not here to conform. Definitely not born to conform. And in fact, one of my big things is the ability to see what is flawed, to basically take that, all the ways that humanity has been conditioned, and say, well, here is another way. And the difference, I guess, in my process while working with human design myself is that whereas this was always a very strong trait in me, I used to be very, I guess you could say, like, rigid and militant, and really say, like, because this is what I'm doing, everybody else has to do it. And this has been a huge, huge, huge shift in my awareness, where this can work for me and I can share this, but I'm not here to share things with everyone, and not everybody is going to resonate. And that's totally okay. And I feel that this kind of softening in, not in who I am, but in really just accepting that the way that is correct for me is not necessarily correct for everyone. That being said, I am here to bring the heresy, and I am here to bring the heresy today about this homogenization of the new age. This is one of the things that we're going to be talking about. And if you've seen any of my videos before, there are, in several of them, I talk about the mutation of our species in 1781, which coincided with the discovery of the planet Uranus in our solar system by Herschel. And not only did we transition from a 7-centered being into a 9-centered being, but our entire lifespan shifted, going from a Saturnian 28-year life cycle to a Uranian 84-year lifespan. So this is like one of the basic premises of what I want to talk about here, is that we are no longer that same seven-centered chakra being that, I mean, a lot of people are still really hung up on it. One of my teachers at one point called it the seven-centered hangover. And I mean, at this point, it's almost hilarious, because in 5 years from now, at the time of this recording in 2027, we're headed towards another major mutation where even this kind of model car that we've been riding around in, these vehicles, these 9-centered vehicles, are also going to kind of become obsolete. So we're in a very special, well, I don't even know if I want to use the word special, it's kind of vain, I mean, the vanity of humanity, but we have an extraordinary opportunity as 9-centered beings to awaken in form. All of this is about our cognition. All of this is about our potential for awareness. So this is something that is going to really come into the presentation today, this shift from 7-centered to 9-centered, and how a lot of these new age concepts are still homogenizing people to these old, outdated concepts and ways of being, I guess you can say. So in the body graph, and some of you may or may not already know what a human design body graph looks like if you have access to your accurate birth information, so birth date, day, month, year, birth time, accurate birth time, and location, then you can generate for free your very own human design body graph, and you'll get a chance to see all of the 9 centers of the body, the way that they're aligned, they're configured for you individually. And you're going to notice that some of them are colored in and some of them are not. So when something is colored in our design, it's considered to be defined. When something is not colored in, it's either undefined or sometimes it's even completely open. And so what I am explaining in this slide is that whether defined or not, okay, so one of the, I guess I should maybe even, I don't know if I should go back to the other slide, but maybe just to kind of clarify, is that the 9-centered vehicle is different. And although there is some, I guess you could say, overlap between centers and chakras, it is very different. Certain biological correlations remain the same, but the layout is different. And the way that the human design body graph is configured is, it doesn't show you what's balanced or what needs to be balanced. It really shows you what it is that you're broadcasting consistently, that is part of who you are, your unique differentiation, what it is that makes you completely different from anybody else, or where you are being conditioned. So one of the centers of the body, and I'm going to actually kind of take out my pen. I don't usually do this in my presentations, but I'm going to do this right now, is this center right here. So this center right here in the body graph is the heart center, but it's also the ego. The heart center and the ego are one and the same. I know that that can be a lot to take in because, as I mentioned before, oftentimes there's this polarization between the heart and the ego, but for the 9-centered being, the heart center and the ego are one and the same. And so what the whole point of this slide is basically to say that whether this center is defined or not, so whether it's colored in red or whether it's white in our design, we are not designed to be egoless. None of us are designed to be egoless. The problem, the actual problem, is the mind, and how mind-driven ego can be an issue. But there are also adaptive strategies of other centers in our design that are open that give healthy ego a bad name. Because this is the thing, a lot of the things that people associate to ego are actually coming from a different place. And this is what I mean by the precision of language, because when you start to see all of the nuts and bolts, you see that many times what is being labeled as ego is not ego at all. And I'm kind of the advocate for the ego today, like kind of rooting for the underdog because of the way that it's being so viciously canceled by society, and yet how important a role that it plays. And when the ego energy is expressed in a healthy way, it's amazing. It's not only amazing, but it's essential for us as human beings. So now that we've covered that, ego 101. Let's talk a little bit about the ego. So this is the thing, ego really has its place. And as you see, again, the heart center is the ego. This center is one of 4 motor centers of the body graph. Motor centers, meaning that there is no awareness. This is a motor that drives willpower and ego power. Out of all of the centers of the body, even the centers that have the most potential activations, this center is actually the most complex in terms of the different correlations that it has for us biologically, which we're going to explore a little later in our presentation. This center is intrinsically connected to the material plane and to the tribe. And while there is definitely an aspect of I, it's also we. And in fact, the whole purpose of ego, for the most part, is that I actually is designed to serve the we. And this is the place where the material and the spiritual meet. So if ever you do explorations about human design, you'll see sometimes the center is called the heart center, sometimes it's called the ego, and sometimes it's called the will. So these are all interchangeable for this one center in the body graph. It's small, but it is mighty. And so what I've done for you here is I laid out, hopefully in a way that is aesthetically pleasing and practical, the different gates that are associated to the ego, and also the channels that can be defined when linking to other centers. Everybody's body graph is different. Some people have a defined ego center and they actually have a channel or several channels coming off of it. And whenever there's a channel, which is basically 2 gates that are linked together, this creates definition. This is an aspect of your life force that is fixed and unchanging, something that is always on 24/7, that is being broadcast into other people, into the environment at all times. It's not something that can change. It's not something that can go away. It's something that, depending on your own alignment, can either be beautiful and clear and unique, or it can be distorted and jarring. And so first, looking at the individual ego gates here over on the left-hand side, you could see that there are four different gates here in the center. So we're going to start here with gate 21. And so right now, the sun happens to be transiting gate 21. So if you're watching this video at this time, as I'm recording it, what is today, April 2nd, 2022, we've still got this energy in the transit field for another couple of days. I think that maybe Venus is also in gate 21 at the moment. So gate 21 it's really all about being in control. Being in control, to be in control, and to control the circumstances. And this, this gate, biologically speaking, controls the heart muscle. It's linked to the heart muscle. It's also linked to the TMJ, so in the jaw. So if you find yourself this week, or depending on what's going on in your design at all times, kind of clenching your jaw, well, that could be linked to this gate. And it's funny, I just realized now I didn't actually put in the names of the gates themselves, but it doesn't matter. I just feel like it was kind of meant to be written this way for the sake of simplicity. So just kind of clarifying that this gate, I mean, there is a gate in the body graph that is about being in control, controlling the circumstances. Somebody who has gate 21 in their design on some level is designed to be in control. It's not something that that is a bad thing. And in fact, if it's something that they're suppressing or trying to suppress, to transcend or bypass, or is told is a bad trait, this could be something that is actually damaging. We have gate 40, which is all about deliverance, to be able to deliver on a promise. This is about the will to provide. And this gate is associated to the stomach. Then we have gate 26, which is all about being the best. Gate 26 is naturally, that has that energy of being the best. This is the gate of the salesperson or the marketer, and it's linked to the thymus gland. Then we have gate 51, which is to be competitive, to be first at something. And this is linked to the gallbladder. So yes, in many ways, yes, the 21 is designed to be controlling. The 40 is all about following through, providing, delivering on promises. The 26 kind of puffs up its chest. It's designed to be very egoic. And the 51 is competitive, shocking, needs to be first. So a lot of these are traits that can really be seen in a bad light, and they can be kind of given a bad reputation. But again, it's all about the way that this energy is wielded in someone's design. Sometimes this is really a part of who they are consistently. Sometimes it is something that's inconsistent, and yet they're learning about it. And when the gate is connected to something on the other side, that's when it becomes a channel. So this one here that links gate 21, that gate of control, to the throat, this is called the channel of money, a design of a materialist. And yes, there are beings on this plane who are very much designed to not only be, I guess you could say, like, have mastery on the material plane, but it really is about overseeing the wealth of the community and also being in control of the resources. So this is not somebody who has this in their design and they're consistently told that they shouldn't be that way. This could be very damaging. We have gate 40, which is the one that's linked to the stomach, about delivering, linking to the solar plexus. And that gate in the solar plexus is actually the mouth. This is the link between the stomach and the mouth. This is the channel of community, a design of a part seeking a whole. So these two channels that we've talked about already are tribal channels. They're very much about support. This 4037 is very much tied into community. It's tied into healthy bargains, healthy deals. I do this for you, and then you allow me to rest, you give me affection. There's all kinds of like deals that are woven in here. So for people who have this channel, community is very important. And then we've got gate 26, thymus, linking to the splenic center. And this is the channel of surrender, a design of a transmitter. This is a very entrepreneurial channel. It's people with this channel have a real gift of being able to kind of sell something to the tribe, whatever it is that is like best and amazing and would actually really serve to support the tribe. And the tribe in general, tribes are competitive. It is about the tribe being the best tribe. There's a certain pride in that, and there's a certain kinship in that. And then, so last but not least, so while all those three channels are tribal, we have this gate 51 linked to the gallbladder that is connected to the G center, the center of identity. This is the one individual channel of the ego, and this is the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first. So this is a super powerful channel as well. It's kind of different from the others. And yet this, instead of being rooted in support, is rooted in empowerment. And people with this design oftentimes go through a lot of initiations themselves, but also can be very powerful initiators for other people. So I don't want to go too deep into like the ins and outs of it. It was just to give you a bit of an overview and how important these themes really are. And that the ego is not just about all of these things that are oftentimes associated with it, such as arrogance or selfishness or whatever else could be linked to it. And in many ways, arrogance and selfishness, when wielded correctly, are actually correct for a being who has a defined ego. So this is not about justifying what we consider to be not self behavior. There are certain things that can be amplified, certain things that can be distorted. But like I said, some of these labels that we associate to the ego are actually things that are coming from other places in the design. So moving here to, I have this little quote. I prepared a quote from the original messenger of the human design system, Ra Uru Hu, who says, "Everything about the tribe is about ego. It's one of those things that I've learned in my process of human design is to recognize that there is no peace in any sense of the word until the tribe has what it has as its requirements, that it has enough food to eat, appropriate shelter, the right to its own costume and role, the right to its own tongue, own language. Until we get to that point that every tribe on the planet has that fundamental right, there will never be any peace. The ego will never let go until it's got its belly full. Until it has that, it will keep on willfully hunting for what it needs. I watch in my experience in this lifetime in the world all kinds of revolutionary movements, and they all speak of the same things that the tribe speaks of. They're just basic things: the right to be healthy, the right to be fed, the right for the capacity to be able to manifest and stay alive as a community. So as you can see, there's so much about the ego and about the tribe that is so intimately connected to our human experience that it is not something that is meant to be transcended. In fact, it's something that is meant to have its place and something that is really meant to be nourished and respected. And through education and through awareness, this is how the best can be brought out of this energy. So this is one of the centers where, despite it being the minority who has a defined ego, it is still so important, because when ego beings are healthy, they are powerful, powerful role models of this energy for the rest of the population who are not, and who are here to really learn about it and here to become wise about it. 37% of the population are legitimate ego beings. So if you have this center defined in your body graph, if it's red, this means that you have reliable, consistent access to willpower. You have a connection to the material plane, so in the form of bargains, deals, promises. On some level, yes, you are here to prove yourself and to gain the trust of the tribe. So whatever the tribe is for you, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's your colleagues. Tribe can be applied in many different contexts, but yes, you do have something to prove. There is a natural pride and competitive nature of this center, and that's not a bad thing. What is really essential is to have a balance between work and rest. So as I mentioned before, this is not an awareness center, this is a motor center, and this is not a motor that has infinite power. It is capable of short bursts of work, and then it has to rest. And what's really, really important for the ego being is to be appreciated and rewarded for work well done. So there can be a huge issue when the ego being is slaving away, whether it's for their couple, whether it's for their family, whether it's for their boss, like whatever it is, and they're not being appreciated and they don't have rest. Like this is it's a really, really important thing that the ego being gets to rest. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about in our presentation is the difference between healthy and unhealthy traits of the defined ego and also of the undefined ego, which we're going to cover later. So when ego energy is unhealthy, what can happen, okay, when you can't deliver on a promise or strike a bargain, it creates distrust in others. So you're really here to create that trust by being able to deliver on a promise or striking a bargain. You can also become ill if you allow your willpower to be controlled or suppressed, whether it's your own internal suppression or whether you're allowing that to be controlled or suppressed by someone else, whether it be your partner, whether it be your parents, whether it be any kind of dynamic, social dynamic where you're allowing that to be controlled or suppressed. It can definitely make you ill. Heart problems, stomach problems, immune problems, gallbladder problems, all of these things that are correlated to the center of the body. Another thing too is really losing the trust of the community if you overvalue your own importance. So again, it's that balance between I and we. So even though, yes, I is important, it's important in the context of the tribe. And whether it's about support or whether it's about empowerment by doing your own thing, there's always something kind of value that it ends up bringing to others. Shying away from work and losing your power and sense of self-esteem. So that's the thing. Work for the ego being is important, not work like a generator or manifesting generator necessarily in terms of the sacral or the sacral, but these short bursts of work when the will is there, this is something that is really important. So if you run away from that, then it's something that can be very unhealthy for the ego. So what is healthy is having a powerful ego, being able to make commitments, having an inherent sense of self-worth and self-esteem, handling the competitive field by exerting your willpower or not, thriving on the material plane through making deals, bargains, or promises that ensure you are valued, and knowing that you're here to work, but with the true aim of making enough money so that you don't have to work. So that's the real brilliance of an ego being who is aligned, is that they have the capacity to kind of set things up so that they can kind of get the most for the least. And it's not a bad thing. It's because this motor does not have infinite power, infinite energy. It really, really does need its rest to be healthy. And so continuing on here with the defined ego, There are some people on this planet whose inner authority, what it is that they can trust to make healthy decisions for themselves, is the ego. So even though that's less than 2% of the world's population, there really are some beings who are designed to trust in the willful movement of the self, allowing their action to come from that motor of the will. Now, this has nothing to do with the mind saying, like, white knuckling it or saying we can do this. It's literally that motor turns on and it has the energy to see that thing through. So if the heart ego center is defined without the solar plexus, so without the solar plexus, without the sacral center defined, without the spleen, we don't have the root here because it's not an actual authority, but the root isn't defined either. This is really about following one's will. So these people, what is their truth? What is their authority? What they are here to trust absolutely is that will to commit to something and to see it through. The will is there or it's not there. Oftentimes there's a sense of, I have to do this. It's almost like this, I don't want to use the word compulsion because it's not like a pathological compulsion, but it's just this, it's like an inner drive, I guess you can say, to just get something done. And for somebody who has this authority, it is absolutely correct to ask oneself, what do I want and what's in it for me? So this is not a bad trait. This is something that's actually really, really important. There has to be something in it for the ego being. But again, it's not all about them. But if they're not really doing what they want, if they're not doing something that has something in it for them, they can't be good to anyone else because they're not operating in alignment with who they are. And so the point that I want to drive home here is that it can actually do someone more harm than good to advise them to reject or to bypass their ego. And it can be really uncomfortable. For example, somebody who has the ego as their inner authority and they're in relationship and their partner doesn't understand this about them. They think that they're really selfish and they maybe they find them controlling, or maybe they don't understand why they get so upset when things aren't fair. There are so many things that we can actually reject and suppress within us that are really there for a reason and really there for us to become aware about so that we do live in alignment with who we are. And so that we can also, in many ways, teach other people how to treat us according to our individual nature, to our unique, differentiated nature. So that is just a little bit here about this, this center being somebody's inner authority. And if you don't know much about inner authority, there's a ton to discover. I know I speak about it quite a bit in different presentations. This is also something that you can find info on the internet. And something that I go into in great detail, not only when I work with people one-on-one, but in my online Living Your Design awakening experience. There's a whole series of, we go into all of the different authorities so that you really understand, how does somebody have this authority? What does it mean? What does it look like when it's operating correctly? So this stuff is really interesting because, again, in terms of the homogenized world, so many times people are advised to listen to their gut when they're not here to listen to their gut, or they're taking courses on how to become more intuitive and spontaneous when they're actually really here to wait for emotional clarity. So we all have different things that we're designed to trust inside of ourselves to make healthy decisions. And we're very homogenized by very well-meaning people, but spirituality and the New Age can be some of the worst because it's like all of this flowery language. And it's like, well, if only you could just meditate and like tune into your heart. We're not all here to follow our heart, but some of us are. And understanding too that the heart and the ego are intrinsically connected is an actual game changer. So the real pandemic, we've kind of been living in this like pandemic crazy world for the last couple of years, but I just wanted to use this word in this context because like this is also something that is very, very serious, with 63% of the population having an undefined or totally open ego center. In terms of the way that this center in its openness takes things in, amplifies and distorts energy, its adaptive strategy, basically, the way that it creates this mental narrative that it creates in the mind is that one has to prove themselves or they have to improve themselves. They're not good, they're shit, they need to get better, whatever. It's just this internal mental narrative that for whatever reason, they're not good enough and they have to be better. This is also because, just due to its nature, people who have a defined ego, it is healthy for them to have goals and to accomplish things, to have these achievements, things that they kind of can aspire to in their own way, and like to meet those challenges, to meet those goals. But the thing is that not everyone is designed to have goals or to have consistent willpower. And there's so many clients that I've been working with, the unbelievable sigh of relief if they have an open or undefined ego when I say to them that they're not here to have goals. It's like the burden of a lifetime has been dropped from their shoulders because it's drilled down their throats from the second that they're born that they need to have goals, be fierce, go out there and make it happen. When the majority of the population, 90 to 92% of the population, were actually really not here to go out there and make it happen. So there's always this intense, intense pressure. Not all of us are designed to have that willpower or to be competitive. There could be so much unworthiness, low self-esteem, openness in the center. We always find ourselves overcompensating because we don't believe that we are enough as we are. Not good enough, not attractive enough. We must prove ourselves or improve ourselves. However, wherever there is openness in our design provides us with a great potential for wisdom, because this is where we're really going to school in this life. And the wisdom potential of this center, when it's open, is having the awareness of who and what is worthy. And this is why having healthy ego beings around us who are operating correctly can be beautiful models of that healthy ego energy. And those of us who are open, when we are no longer blinded by the conditioning where we're running around trying to prove ourselves, we can be the best. I don't want to use the word judges because it's really not about judging, but at the same time, like we have the capacity to be wise about whose ego energy is healthy, which egos are healthy. And kind of bring this back in here, that some of the most like insidious and some of the most intense to capitalize on the undefined egos of the world are actually beauty and fitness, self-help, and the spirituality industries. Because all of these are selling, they're selling to the undefined ego, basically saying, we know that you don't feel good enough the way that you are. So here, let me help you with that. Why don't you do this? And what can be really, really difficult too is there's some really, really amazing coaches out there, life coaches, business coaches, you name it, who have a defined ego. But when an undefined ego is in the presence of a defined ego, they kind of are borrowing that person's willpower. And while they're with that person, they can feel super pumped up. Yes, I have it. I can do it. I can do it. Tony Robbins is just like the perfect example of that. You go to the seminar, you walk on fire, you feel like you're freaking amazing, and you leave. And some time goes by, and then you start feeling like a failure. Why can't I keep up with that? It's because you're not here to have that consistent willpower. And you're also not here to be proving yourself. So looking at the healthy versus unhealthy traits of the undefined ego, unhealthy traits are making promises you cannot keep, feeling unworthy and undervalued, being insecure with the material world, having a hard time charging money or assigning value to what you have to offer, trying to reach goals to overachieve in life by sheer force of will, overcompensating, being overly competitive, or shying away from competition for fear of losing. Healthy traits: having a healthy sense of self-esteem, making no promises in life, and having nothing whatsoever to prove to anyone. Being wise about who can make commitments and promises and fulfill material demands. Enjoying and taking advantage of the conditioning of the competitive field, but able to let go at any time. And having a healthy relationship to money. So another quote: when we're looking at the open heart center and we're looking at this lack of will or inconsistent will in 2/3 of humanity, you can see why the seven-centered being puts so much emphasis on will, God's will, your will, this will, thy will be done, and so forth and so on. It really became the goad, the great goad. That is, invent, create out of your mental, not self, an artificial willpower, and let's watch you fail. And then we can see that you're not quite worthy. And so everything becomes a competition. Everything becomes an enormous comparison game, and everybody's trying to prove that they're worthy. We have a planet that's locked into that. That is, they're locked into the malaise of what is the open heart. So yes, on one hand, one of the things that can be so jarring with 63% of the population being open or undefined is that the majority of the planet is running around and trying to prove themselves. So yes, it definitely is obnoxious. And I'm very grateful in my own life and process to be surrounded by healthy ego beings, and healthy ego beings who, through their own deconditioning process and really aligning to who they are, have been able to really educate me as to what can be so distasteful to them in the undefined ego. And look, there are many open centers in my design, but I have to say that this is a very, very insidious place to decondition and to realize, for me to realize that I'm not here to have goals, and that doesn't make me weak or lazy, that I don't have to prove myself to anybody, that I'm not here to make promises that I can say, well, I can try, but I can't guarantee this. It's like it has taken such an enormous weight off of me to be able to just relax into who I am and to not have to strive to be better. It really is a pervasive sickness of this planet. So another thing I wanted to talk about is the effect of the defined ego on the undefined or open ego. Now, I did bring up that example of Anthony Robbins and any kind of a, like a coach where you're with that coach and you feel like you're on top of the world, and then you leave their aura and all of a sudden you feel like a failure. You go to some quit smoking seminar, you leave, you're feeling fine. And then by the time you get home, you actually realize that you're already halfway to the store to pick up another pack of cigarettes. So it's like people can get so down on themselves. Why don't I have that willpower to see something through? Well, because you might not be designed for that, and it doesn't make you weak or bad. So this issue with the defined on the undefined is that the defined ego, without even realizing it, there can be a certain forcefulness, and they can really put pressure on others to be disciplined and willful expecting others to deliver on promises and get things done in the same way that they do. So this is just something to watch out for if you have a defined ego, because this is something that you have the capacity for that many, many people around you might not. And even having that awareness can allow you to wield that energy in, I'm not going to say a more delicate way, but just with greater awareness. Which leads us to this next segment here, which is really about cultivating awareness and getting back into ego as a concept and ego labels. So this is an invitation, an opportunity to explore what it is that you believe about ego and what you believe about ego being bad, why ego is bad. What are these distasteful traits that you associate with the word ego? So some of this, for example, I'm just going to bring one thing up here. In terms of looking at these adaptive strategies of the not self mind and the way that it can distort our definition. Because like I said, what we associate as ego oftentimes are coming from different places. So we talked about the arrogance, we talked about the selfishness. One of the things too could just be somebody who is very almost like mentally forceful, like what they know is right, for example. Well, that's not something that comes from the ego at all. That's something that comes from the, well, and maybe, I mean, it could be coming from here. But for example, the Ajna center, and whether it's defined or undefined, that could be coming from there and not be coming from the ego at all. So it's just going to show that some of these things that we can label as ego have nothing whatsoever to do with ego. And that's something that continually will undermine healthy ego and the way that healthy ego is made to operate. So bringing, I can't help but bring this in just because it's so huge and it's so like all pervasive these days, especially with this concept of like ascension and awakening. And truly, awakening has nothing to do with transcending ego at all. At the beginning of the presentation, I was speaking about our transition into the nine-centered being and how we have this cognitive capacity. And it truly is this cognitive capacity that is tied into this process of awakening in form. This consciousness, this passenger that's riding around in this form, this vehicle, it is the capacity for self-reflected awareness. So the actual process of awakening involves becoming aware of the conditioned internal narrative that keeps us locked into living out who we're not. Living out who we're not. The conditioned internal narrative is coming from all kinds of places, and it has nothing to do with getting out of one's ego. So this is why precision of language, understanding your unique configuration and what is correct for you to be able to step out of that mainstream narrative, this could be the hugest gift on your own path of awakening. Whether defined in your design or not, denying, running from, or avoiding ego is conditioned. It's not about escaping it or being above it. It's about cultivating awareness. And I remember when I was putting together the presentation, I had several examples of this. And like right in this moment, I'm I don't even know if this is something that I'm going to go into in more detail, because I feel like in so many ways we've already really covered that in different slides, where shutting down some of these very healthy aspects of ego are actually what can be very unhealthy for us. And in our humanity, being humans on the material plane, the ego is essential. So again, cultivating awareness about the way that it is designed to operate in your own design, whether it's defined, whether this is a consistent center for you, on some level, if it's defined, it's because there has to be one channel. You have to have some aspect of your life force connected to this channel. It could be a gate as well, or several gates, or if it's undefined, some people have very, very specific wisdom potentials, basically hooks into the conditioning field, specific things they're designed to learn about the ego. And there are other people who, I guess you could say, they've got almost like their PhD, and they're like true clean mirrors of this this energy for others. These people may not have any idea of who or what to value, but as they go through their own process of deconditioning and become more aware, they can be some of the wisest people as to who and what is worthy. So healthy ego modeling from the defined ego and wisdom of the deconditioned undefined ego are so beautiful to witness. In my life, I have many ego beings. Some of them have been really challenging. Some of them have been incredibly supportive and empowering. And either way, the wisdom that I am cultivating through my observation of them, through my observation of myself in relationship to them, has been priceless. I mean, kind of pun intended, right? With all of its connection to the material plane, but it really has been priceless. And in my own journey, layers and layers and layers are really continuing to appear as to how deeply conditioned I have been through the center my whole entire life. So anyways, I just really wanted to elaborate a little bit more about this center and to start busting through some myths about it and bringing in a little bit more precise language. This is just a door opening to further investigation for some of you, perhaps, maybe just instilling a sense of curiosity. I don't know. Far from complete. In Living Your Design, we definitely go into detail about this center. Again, something that you can even research on your own. But if you have the opportunity to get to know your own design and to understand the way that this energy is designed to operate for you in your life, and maybe especially for those of you who are projectors, the people in your life who are close to you, to be able to look at their charts and then get a deeper understanding through your exploration of others. There's just so much incredible wisdom to be cultivated. So if you have made it this far, thank you so much. It's been great. I look forward to sharing more videos with you soon. Anybody who is ready to dive into their own personal exploration, I offer Human Design personal chart overviews on Zoom. I also do coaching by design. So anybody who's already had a reading and just wants to kind of dig in, get geeky and nerdy and talk about specifics, maybe some dilemmas that have been elusive to you. That's some of my favorite things. And I'm not sure when my next Living Your Design Awakening will be, but if you are interested in maybe joining me for a journey in the future, I'd love to hear from you. I could definitely keep in touch, keep you posted about my future events. So until next time, thanks again and take care.